Welcome back to Unquiet You. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that might sting a little bit, but it's a topic that I've talked to my clients about lately, and it's the fact that you're not that important. What I mean by this is we don't realize this, but that we're really not that important to everyone else. And I think this happens a lot with moms and women in general, but we spend years like focusing on other people and creating this desire to be needed. I think as moms, this is very easy to do when we have children, right? Where we become like their lives become our need, right? Like we want to, when they're little, we want to protect them and we feed them and give them all the things and teach them all the things. And then as they get older, we have this desire to be needed. And so we tend to get involved in their life and overstep and create chaos sometimes when it's not necessarily there. And what ends up happening is like we have to realize that we're not that important to other people's problems or their lives, right? Like we can't control outcomes for them, and we're not always the one who can save the day. And I think sometimes this can be a hard pill to swallow when we have to really, really look at that and understand that like that's not our place to do. Like we are not on a pedestal where we can fix everyone's problems. It's actually not our place to fix everyone's problems. And when we can finally accept that, what ends up happening is we are able to get our lives back and we're able to step into becoming important enough for ourselves and creating the life that we truly desire. So I think sometimes we have this illusion of being needed, whereas we attach our worth to being the one that everyone turns to, right? And I relate to this in so many ways from childhood up, actually, that I always wanted to be the one that people could call no matter what. I would always be there for my friends who were in need. I would drop what I was doing to help other people. I would focus on what my kids needed or try and control the outcome of what they were doing because I wanted to fix it, right? Like I wanted to be the fixer. And I think that the adrenaline of being like the go-to person, it makes us feel important. It makes us feel like we have a purpose. It makes us feel like we're needed. And I think that it's a really good feeling to think that you're needed by other people and, people want your advice or they want your help, right? Or like that you can fix things for them. And what ends up happening is we get into a cycle, right? So it's like we start to overgive ourselves. We start to give ourselves away in order to make space for other people's problems. Or we sometimes, have you ever been on the phone for an hour and a half late at night listening to someone else's problems and trying to fix their problems when you know that sleep is what you really need, right? And then you wake up and you're not in a good mood and you haven't slept. And I do think that there are times of that. And I think part of that is being a good friend or a good parent or just a good human, right? But some of us can place so much of our needs onto other people's needs. Like that's how we feel important, that we let it overconsume us. So we will start this cycle of overgiving, which creates overwhelming chaos, right? In our lives, where we'll say things like, everything feels chaotic. I can't control anything. Like I feel like there's so many fires I'm trying to put out and I can't get anything done. And so then that will turn into resentment, right? So we're resenting the things that we can't do because all of our time and attention is given to this person, or we're helping fix this person's problems. And, sometimes we'll offer to fix someone's problems and they won't take our advice or they won't take the route we want them to. And then we get frustrated, right? And it's like, I gave so much time and energy to this person and they still didn't do what I wanted them to do, or then we start to feel this sense of emptiness where it's like, well, that didn't work. They didn't want us. They didn't need us. And so now we're empty inside because they've moved on. Being needed can feel like purpose, right? It can feel like we're doing something, like this is our purpose. Our purpose is a mom, right? Like we want to protect, we want to help guide, we want to help our friends. And this will feel like purpose until the moment that you realize that you've now created your identity based on other people's problems instead of your own growth. This was a really hard pill for me to swallow, was that I realized I was putting my identity on the identity of all the people that I was helping, right? So I was I was letting my worth become value based off how I can help other people and how I can stop people's pain from coming into play. And it creates a lot of emptiness and a lot of sadness. And I was talking with my client, and she was talking about, her life felt very chaotic. And so I just had to look at her for a moment, and I just said, you're just not that important. And we sat with that for a second. And what I meant by that was that she wasn't that important to be needed by people who could actually take care of themselves. A lot of times we want to, maybe it's someone who is a little bit younger than us, or maybe it's a situation we've gone through that they are going through, and we want to control it for them. Like we want to create their outcome for them, when in reality that it's not our problem to fix. They can take care of themselves. And I think most people want to take care of themselves. They don't want us to fix everyone's lives, but we find importance in fixing other people's lives. And I think that one of the things that she kind of took away from this was realizing that she had given, her life felt chaotic because she was constantly trying to put out fires for other people that actually had nothing to do with where she was and where she was going in her life. It was literally her putting her desires on hold and her life on hold to fix these other people's problems that weren't even hers to fix. And most of the situations, they didn't even involve her. They had involved her because she had gotten into the conversation or they reached out to her, but the situations themselves never even involved her in her life. So one of the things that I often think about is like over-functioning is often a mask for under-healing. And I think sometimes we over-function so that we can avoid the healing. And so we don't have to face the healing ourselves. And if you can stay busy fixing other people's stuff, then you can avoid working on fixing yourself and facing your own things in the mirror, right? Like focusing on you and getting yourself to the healing place that you want to be and to the stage of life that you want to be. And I think sometimes as moms, we can confuse love with the constant need of being useful. And I think what ends up happening is as our kids grow and they become independent, they're not needing us as much, right? Like they start making their own decisions and they start expanding themselves and they start doing more. I think when we build our brand, like our identity on their needs and like what they're wanting and how they're living their lives, then their independence feels like rejection to us instead of success. And that is one thing I've always focused on is like, I wanted my kids to be so independent. I've always said I want my kids to be 10 times better than I have ever been. And being independent is so important. And I want them to make their own decisions. I don't want them to feel like they have to come to me to make a decision or that I'm going to judge a decision. But I also had to realize that them making their own decisions, it wasn't a rejection towards me as a mom or a human, that was actually the sign of success. Like that's what you want for your kids is you want them to grow up and become independent. And like, that's an amazing gift, but we have to learn to let go of trying to control other people's identity and letting their identities become us being needed and wanted. If your self-worth is attached to being needed, you'll always feel abandoned. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with because we want to attach our self-worth to how much other people need us. Because feeling needed by someone else, like when you have a baby and that baby needs you, it's really fun and it's exciting and you feel like you have a purpose, right? You feel like that baby is attached to you and they need you to take care of them and they need these things for you. But as they get older or, even as we get older and we evolve, like they don't need us anymore. And we have to learn to detach from that, or we're always going to feel abandoned by our kids, or we're going to feel abandoned by people that matter to us, because when they don't need us, we start looking at it as like, what are we doing wrong? And the whole point of this situation with my client and something that I've had to look at is that what I realized is that I am very important. You are very important. You are actually the most important. But it's for the reasons that you've been trying to prove, or it's not for the reasons that you've been trying to prove, right? Like you are important because you are you, and you are needed by you. Like, we need ourselves to show up for ourselves. The same energy and attention that you're giving others to feel needed is exactly what we need within ourselves. When we stop obsessing over who needs us, you actually have the space to ask yourself, like, what do I need? Like, what do I want? And how can I show up for myself? Like, how can I show myself that I'm important enough to do X, Y, and Z? Like, how can I do that for myself? So some of the questions that I ask is like, where in your life are you over giving to avoid self-reflection? This is, I think, a very good question, especially for us moms, because we tend to overgive ourselves instead of facing self-reflection. And I think that this happens a lot in the older generation of parents, like my age parents and grandparents. I see a lot of this where they're always trying to have their hand in their kids' lives. These are grown kids who are doing their own thing, but they need to have a hand in controlling an aspect of it, whether it's like controlling, like, I'm going to help this kid get into college, or I'm going to do this for this grandkid, or I'm going to fix this for this child, or whatever it is. And I think that same generation struggles with looking at themselves in the mirror and having accountability for their actions and who they are and where they're at within their own self-reflection. I think it's the same thing with, I think they have a hard time saying I'm sorry or acknowledging when they have done something that they wish they would have done differently, or that they should apologize for or could apologize for. But I think that it's really hard for them to have self-reflection. And so they're always having their hand in someone else's business, right? Like, it's because that makes them feel needed. It makes them feel like, oh, I've got to fix this for somebody, right? Like, that's my purpose. So I think that's a really good question to ask, is like, where are we avoiding self-reflection? Another question is, whose happiness are you trying to manage so that you don't have to sit with your own discomfort? And I think that this is a really good question when we all want to find inner happiness, and we all want happiness for other people. But I think sometimes we try really, really hard to make other people happy and do things for other people, because we don't want to have to sit in discomfort of an emotion that we're going through or that we need to feel to push forward. And a question I ask my clients, and sometimes I ask myself this too: if no one needed you tomorrow, who would you be? And this question I like because being a mom, like, I always have kids around me, or I'm talking to kids, or my life, like, kind of revolves around my kids. And I do want to be with them and see them as much as possible and help where they ask me to help. But sometimes I have to sit back and ask myself, like, as my kids are grown, they're all grown except one, and she's very independent and she'll be grown in a couple years. And so I have to remind myself, like, I'm still here, and like, who would I be? Like, who do I want to be when I'm not needed by other people? And so as I wrap up this conversation, I just want you to understand that you are wildly important to your own healing, like your own joy and becoming who you truly want to be. And you are so important to yourself, but you're not that important to other people's chaos, and it's not yours to carry. So when you can finally let it go and realize that you don't have to carry someone else's chaos, that you get to be so important to yourself, that you get to figure out what you want and who you want to be and where you want to go, like, that's the important thing. Like, it is important for you to see yourself and take care of your own needs, instead of looking for being needed and feeling important by other people. So if this one hit you and kind of woke you up and you realized, like, this was something that you struggled with, I know for years it's something that I've struggled with. And I, as a mom, can easily go back to it. Even as a friend, sometimes I can easily go back into this world of feeling like it feels good to be needed. And I have to remind myself that it's important for me to be needed and to show up for myself, because then I can give back in other ways that I think probably help people more when I am taking care of my own needs. So ask yourself those questions, reach out if you have any questions. And this is something that we work with my one-on-one clients a lot, because as women, especially, I think this is such a topic that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, because we are more nurturing and we do tend to give more of ourselves to other people. So hope this helped today, and we will see you next time. Thanks for being here and for choosing to be a little louder, a little braver, and a whole lot more you. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep tuning in to the fire inside. Stay unquiet.